Toll roads are part of life for millions of Australians. For some, it's pushing them to the edge.
People just can't keep paying these kinds of tolls.
As the cost of living soars, toll prices keep rising too.
And you've put on admin fees and other fees on top of that, it seemed quite outrageous to me.
What percentage of your income are you paying in tolls?
It could be as high as 20%.
20%?
Yeah.
Skip the toll roads and you risk being late for work or losing business. If you fail to pay, in the worst case, you can wind up being treated like a criminal.
These are letterbox. They'll blow up in your face the more you ignore them. They just blow your life apart.
There goes another toll.
Yeah, so that thing's beeping all day.
Did you ever imagine that driving on a toll road could result in you having potential prison time?
Definitely not, no, I find it unbelievable.
The company that dominates the toll road industry, Transurban, is earning record revenue.
Their business is not there for the public good, it's there to make money.
Decades-long deals struck with state governments mean drivers are forced to pay more every year.
The public deserves to know exactly what's in these contracts.
People are entitled to feel a level of outrage that the taxpayer is absorbing the costs to protect a private company's profits. This is just a revenue protection issue.
Even the watchdog that's tasked with resolving toll disputes is funded by Transurban. This is not what I was expecting.
To say the least, the Ombudsman doesn't look independent.
Now, Transurban's golden run is under threat. Even the man who helped build the empire wants to hit the brakes on tolls.
They can move, but only in tune with inflation.
I mean, that's a remarkable recommendation from somebody who helped negotiate this contract.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Well, we grow up, Pat.
For decades, toll road companies have been promising shiny new highways at little cost to taxpayers, all to be paid for by future generations. Now that generation is here, dealing with the ever-increasing costs of getting around cities on toll road systems that are almost impossible to avoid. Well, one state government is promising to take control and slash toll prices. It's picked a fight with a multi-billion-dollar corporate giant that has a record of getting its way.
Sit. Archie, sit. Sit. There you go. You go get some leaves, please.
Edwina Hyler is dealing with constant demands on her time and on her family's budget.
You know, I've got two children and a husband and 3 dogs and a house to run and a job to do.
Until last December, she was working in administration at a school in Sydney's north.
Archie, come on.
Driving there and back from her home in the city's northwest took 2 hours a day, most of the trip on toll roads.
And if we add them up, I think it works out to be about $30 a day. So what's $150 a week?
$150 a week?
Yeah. I mean, that's half our grocery bill, really. I can still feel that sick feeling if I hear the low balance beep, beep, beep. You know, you kind of go like, oh, and you know, the anxiety that it causes logging in to see, am I overdrawn on my toll account?
The cost of travelling to the job she loved became increasingly hard to bear. She was paying about 10% of her salary in tolls, similar to what people in her area pay on average if they commute to the city for work. Edwina was facing a painful decision.
I didn't earn enough to pay the school fees and cover the tolls, and so I needed to find something closer to home.
So you actually had to quit your job because toll roads, just getting to work, became too expensive?
Yeah. Yeah, it just wasn't, wasn't feasible anymore to pay that kind of money in tolls just to get to work. Like, I'd have to work a day just to pay tolls.
The New South Wales government has since introduced a $60 per week cap on toll roads. But it's a trial that will only run for 2 years. When it ends, motorists may be back to paying full price tolls. Living in Sydney and living in this part of Sydney in particular, do you feel like you've got much choice around toll roads?
No, not really. I mean, for us to get to the city, it's $30 return. And same if I go down and see my mum down in the Southern Highlands, I think that's about $20 now. There's just, the M2, the M7 one way, the M4, like there's tolls everywhere. Everywhere you turn, there's a toll.
It's a feeling shared by drivers in Australia's 3 biggest cities, where one company dominates the toll industry, Transurban. It operates 18 of Australia's 22 tollways. In Sydney, its 11 toll roads stretch 150 kilometres. In Brisbane, over the past decade, it bought up every one of the city's 6 toll roads. And in Melbourne, the jewel in the Transurban crown, CityLink, its biggest earning road.
It's really very simple. They're just there to make money out of road building. And there's no conspiracy. They look for those opportunities where they can pick up a bargain, they can pick up a tollway that somebody else built that went financially bust, or they can, support one that they're devising themselves, whatever that might be.
Transurban has secured its financial success by negotiating guaranteed toll increases of 4% a year for most of its toll roads. During times of high inflation, like the past 3 years, its contracts with state governments trigger toll increases that match the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. In the past 2 years, its annual toll road revenue has jumped by almost $1 billion to $3.5 billion. Last August, former Transurban Chief Executive Scott Charlton said that the cost of living crisis was delivering a windfall for the company.
We're creating this wedge of revenue versus what we're paying on interest rate. At some point, interest rates come off, but then that wedge will compound and compound for the next 40, 50 years. So inflation, particularly over a short term, is very good for Transurban. We do understand it puts pressure on our customers and drivers, and very wary of that, as I said, in the hardship programs.
It's not just the squeeze on the household budget. In Victoria, not paying your tolls can land you in prison. Mark PS is dealing with this prospect right now. He's faced with toll fines that have snowballed into tens of thousands of dollars.
I just think it's madness, to be honest with you. I don't get it. I don't know how this is allowed to happen.
Mark is a plumber in Melbourne, spending hours each day on the road.
Up and down here regularly, could be 3, 4, 5 times a day.
There goes another toll.
Yeah, so that thing's beeping all day. What's the go? What do I have to pick up for this job?
During 2015 and 2016, he didn't pay about 200 tolls. It's only recently that the consequences have caught up with him.
Cool.
Thanks, mate.
And what was that time like for you? What was happening for you that time?
Oh, listen, I had a separation from a partner. I wound up my business, moved to a different area. There was a whole lot of things that sort of contributed it. But it doesn't take me long to rack up 200 trips on a toll road, because I'm, probably go out into those gantries, 30, 40, 50 times a week, so maybe more. Each one of these represents...
When the bill finally landed in June this year, it was a bombshell.
up around the $80,000. It's ridiculous.
In Victoria, debts owed to the toll operators become fines enforced by the state, a privilege not given to any other private company. Loaded up with penalty after penalty, for Mark an unpaid $3 toll ballooned to a $340 fine.
The original fine for not paying the toll was $152, and we've got something that's called a PRN fee, registration fee, enforcement warrant fee, which add on to the top of the 152, which equals $339.60 in that case.
Times that by 200, plus a few other minor infringements, and Mark suddenly owed an $86,000 debt to the state.
I don't know what all these fees are about, to be honest with you. I have no idea what they're for. Even the fine, I think, is ridiculous.
The bulk of Mark's fines were for trips on Eastlink, which runs through Melbourne's eastern suburbs and is owned by global investors, including the Australian Government's Future Fund. His other fines were for trips on Transurban CityLink.
A lot of people would look at this and say, well, I pay my tolls. They might not feel that much sympathy for you.
Yeah, oh well, that's fine. I'm on the toll roads every day. I probably spend close to $100 a week. Have done ever since then. So I certainly contribute my fair share. It's gone from 800 or 900 to about 80,000. So yeah. I don't know. It's unbelievable, really.
Things could be about to get even worse for Mark, because in Victoria, where toll fines are handled by the criminal justice system, he could end up in prison if he doesn't pay. His only hope is to convince a magistrate to cut him some slack, wipe some of the fines, and set up a payment plan.
This is serious. This is talking about prison time for this.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I find it unbelievable. For some outstanding toll charges, that that's an option. I can't sort of comprehend that. I'm not looking in that direction, I can tell you.
He says the first he heard of the monster debt was in June, when the Victorian sheriff sent officers to arrest him.
Two blokes at the front door demanding to sort of come and have a look at your house, and it was very intrusive. I was pretty upset about it.
The unique way Victoria deals with toll fines first appeared 30 years ago, when the legislation for CityLink, Transurban's first toll road, was written. It was the first time an Australian government had allowed a private company to use the criminal justice system to chase people who don't pay tolls.
I submitted all the stat decks except the one that hadn't been witnessed.
But what impact are these laws having now? To find out, I'm meeting with community lawyers who are dealing with the toll fine crisis every day. Lawyers like Shifra Bluestein.
Imagine if you had a $100,000 debt that the government was chasing you for. This is creating massive anxiety for people, massive stress, creating all sorts of flow-on effects for their families, as well as the community, because obviously the government is picking up the bill for people's deterioration in mental health, physical health, and all the flow-on consequences. But the reality for our clients is they may not know what options are available to them. They're having to choose between putting food on the table or paying their rent and paying this toll fines bill.
I just got a response from them within about an hour of sending something through.
Drivers who seek legal help do have options. They can apply to have their penalties waived if they've faced hardship, like mental illness, addiction, or domestic abuse.
The clients that we're dealing with, it's like an extreme level. They are not people flouting the system. They are genuinely struggling with very real issues like homelessness, family violence.
What's the biggest debt you've seen for a toll road? How bad can this get for people?
I think it was close to $400,000.
$400,000?
Yeah.
How can it escalate to that level?
I mean, obviously that person has been using the road a fair bit. most people's aren't quite that big, but because of the way that it gets inflated from the original debt, they do get very large, and they're completely unpayable, unimaginable to people.
The numbers really tell the story. The latest figures obtained by Four Corners show that last year, Melbourne's toll road operators sent more than 236,000 toll debts worth more than $40 million to be collected as fines by the police, the sheriffs and through the courts. Well, this morning, we're on our way out to Ringwood in Melbourne's east to go to the Magistrates Court and see what that looks like. Outside court, I meet Bruce Mabus, a roofer who is studying to become a commercial boat captain. He's clutching a stack of toll fines.
I've got 185,000 with big fines.
185,000?
Yeah.
Have you got any way of paying off $185,000?
No. No. There's no way I'll be able to afford that at all.
Bruce racked up $12,000 in unpaid tolls and admin fees while battling health problems over the past 8 years. But when the fees were handed over to the state for enforcement, he was fined a devastating $185,000. What do you think is going to happen?
I'm hoping for the outcome of it's getting squashed because I am doing the right thing by paying the toll bill off, which is essentially what it's all about.
Bruce is one of 9 toll fine cases today. In the past year in Victoria, 1,465 people faced court for the same reason. His lawyer is granted a delay in his case so a psychologist report can be prepared in the hope his fines can be dismissed on medical grounds.
Yeah, it's still a headache that's going to be there, and they said not to stress, but how can you not?
So it's dragging on again. How do you deal with this?
It's just a weight that you carry around, really, so you sort of get used to it, but you shouldn't. I could probably end my life if I wanted to get out of it, but I'm not like that, so...
Has it really pushed you that far, this debt?
Yeah, yeah. But we're nearly at the end of the road, so hopefully I can move on and, yeah, start living a bit more life than always worrying about this debt that's hanging over my head.
Well, you don't have to spend long in here to get a sense of the burden these cases are putting on the courts. Time after time, the magistrate was quite happy to adjourn these cases or wipe out tens of thousands of dollars in fines for people who had a good explanation of why they couldn't pay. Which raises the question, is this the best way to deal with this?
Why wouldn't you intervene much earlier in the system and just not fine people in the first place? Instead of fining them, then the state expends what we think is probably millions of dollars chasing people who are never going to be able to pay, only for the fines to be withdrawn, you know, at the pointy end of the system.
The Victorian government has attempted to fix the problem. Since 2020, drivers can only receive 1 toll fine per week instead of 1 for every unpaid trip. That's led to a sharp drop in total fines issued, more than halved since the peak of 600,000 fines in 2020. Despite this, the state expects its annual toll fine revenue to jump from $39 million to $65 million next year. The Victorian government's told Four Corners it's also introduced a scheme that deals with toll fines through counselling and volunteer work instead of prison. There's pressure to pull toll fines out of the criminal justice system and treat them just like any other unpaid bill. Shifra Bluestein argues the current system is designed to punish drivers to protect toll road profits.
People are entitled to feel a level of outrage that the taxpayer is absorbing the costs of a system that is designed to protect a private company's profits. There doesn't seem to be any other justification for it. It's not a safety issue where, you know, you can see why we have red light cameras, for example. We want people to drive safely, but this isn't a safety issue. This is just a revenue protection issue.
Australia's toll road story started way before cars were even invented. In 1811, the first toll was charged for horses on Parramatta Road in Sydney. As cars took over cities, governments had to provide more and bigger roads. They couldn't always afford them. Last century's toll roads were mostly built in partnership between government and private investors and handed back to the public after drivers paid them off.
They were only in private ownership for about 15 years, and 15 years was over in the blink of an eye, whereas now these roads are in private hands for many, many, many decades.
Michelle Zybots is one of Australia's leading transport policy experts. She's been advising state politicians for decades.
You wonder, well, gee, how much are these things going to cost in the year 2045 and 2055 when these roads are still being run, presumably, by Transurban?
When Transurban started building Melbourne's CityLink in 1996, it became one of the first publicly listed companies solely focused on toll roads and replaced toll gates with new technology.
The road will be electronically tolled, and the way of doing that is by fixing a transponder to the vehicle and reading that transponder. Setting the roadmap, isn't it, for the future?
There are few figures in Australia more responsible for the toll road system than Tony Shepherd, a business heavyweight and former Transurban director.
Has Transurban gotten too big?
Pat, I don't think so. There's efficiencies in scale. All of the toll roads they've had were bid competitively, so they didn't have a free run.
Today, Transurban and its investment partners own every Sydney toll road, except the Harbour Bridge and Tunnel.
Unfortunately, we do have a very heavily toll road heavy network in play here in Australia, and that's because we needed the infrastructure in place. Governments couldn't do it.
Global infrastructure investor Sarah Shaw says part of Transurban's success has been its ability to convince governments to build more roads without putting them out to tender.
Where Transurban has been successful is in extending particular roads or expanding roads as cities have grown. As a general rule, government budgets are stretched. So the best outcome for them is for the existing operator who has the expertise to undertake the additional works, and in compensation they get either an extension or a toll hike or some form of compensation to allow them to get a return on the additional investment they need to put in.
A critical replacement for the Westgate Bridge, giving motorists that choice, the tunnel or the bridge.
In Melbourne, Transurban convinced the Dan Andrews government in 2015 to extend its ownership of CityLink by 10 years to fund its new Westgate tunnel.
Good morning, everybody. This is such an exciting day.
It's taken the same approach in Sydney, partially funding the NorthConnex tunnel by extending tolls on the M7 for 11 years.
It's a deal that the government wanted, so what's the problem? Don't we like, we've got to the stage now we don't like companies making money. Is there some problem with people making profits?
Well, I think people have a problem if there's no competition, right? If the company's approaching government and saying, here's a project, and the government disagrees to it. Yeah, well, they either agree or disagree. The government can say, no, we're not going to do it, and we'll go to the market. If that's what they want to do, they can do it.
There's going to be a need for more roads, but particularly to serve the West.
In a remarkable about-face, one of the people who convinced governments to provide Transurban its guaranteed 4% annual price increases, Tony Shepherd, now says it should end.
Well, I think in new projects, I think we can eliminate it. Now, we put it in originally because the risks were just so enormous, and that was what we needed to get people to be prepared to invest.
I mean, that's extraordinary. This 4%, that's the kind of deal that you once negotiated, and now you're saying that's not appropriate anymore.
No, I think it's not now. I think now we've matured in the business, and I think now it would be better to tie it to actual inflation and be more acceptable to the users.
In Brisbane, Transurban's the only toll company in town. Over the last decade, it's bought up all of the 6 toll roads in Brisbane, all but one owned by the state government. Driving around Brisbane, you quickly get a sense of just how reliant people are on these roads, but also what an improvement it's made for people getting around the city. There is, of course, a downside. And just like in Melbourne, the operator of these roads, Transurban, has the right to hand over its debts to be collected by the state. When you factor in administration fees, those debts can quickly spiral out of control. Toll road users are fighting back. Simon Barclay has joined a class action alleging Transurban has gouged motorists with late fees.
Oh no.
For years, he put off buying a house and starting a family because of a hefty toll road debt.
As it delayed our life plans, it felt like a hovering invisible hand is effectively holding you to ransom for something you didn't know you were participating in.
Good boy.
As a student a decade ago, Simon missed 25 tolls driving to work on Brisbane's airport link because he says his e-tag was faulty. By the time the bills arrived, each $3 toll had accumulated an extra $25 in administration fees.
When you start to see you've multiplied the cost of the toll by 10 times to send one letter, one A4 page letter, and you've put on admin fees and other fees on top of that, it seemed quite outrageous to me.
One of the real terrors of the system is how it can run out of control very, very easily with just slight inattention, or if you're travelling and if you haven't paid, you may end up with notices upon notices, fees upon fees. It seems disproportionate and it seems really unfair.
Lawyer Greg White from Piper Alderman is running a class action against Transurban, the Queensland Government and Brisbane City Council, alleging the administration fees are illegal. He says the automatic $40 now added to unpaid tolls should be more like $1.
They are operating a very aggressive defence. I would like to discuss some aspects of their evidence in the defence in greater detail, but unfortunately it's subject to a sweeping confidentiality regime that prevents me from commenting on anything but public court document records.
So if you win, how much is Transurban going to have to repay its customers?
Well, we're still working out the figures, but it would have to be several $100 million.
Transurban declined an offer to be interviewed by Four Corners and refused to answer questions we put to them. In a statement, it said,
"Neither Transurban nor other toll road investors decides the costs of travelling on toll roads. Toll prices in Australia and how much they rise have always been determined by state or local governments, as have the charges associated with toll notices and late payments."
I'll be right over Isla Bizzle.
Simon Barclay's toll debt followed a familiar path. By the time the toll operator handed it over to Queensland authorities to be pursued as a fine, he owed nearly $8,000 and had to pay it off in monthly instalments.
Coming to the end of paying off that $8,000, I could feel nothing but begrudgement, really, that I would been the victim effectively of something that was predatory.
Brisbane's low-income areas feel the sting of toll fines. Ipswich and Logan residents account for the bulk of Queensland's staggering $125 million in outstanding fines. We've calculated that for a person to drive daily from the centre of Ipswich or Logan to Brisbane Airport would cost a resident between 9 and 13% of their average salary. Former postie Peter saw this inequality up close, delivering toll debt letters in the Logan suburbs of Beenleigh and Eagleby.
It started to prey on my mind. I realised that these letters that I was delivering were to people who were, for some reason, found themselves in unfortunate circumstances. After I started noticing them, I was delivering to certain people in certain places, sometimes 3 a week, over 2 weeks, sometimes 5. Over the 3 years before I retired, I would have delivered thousands of them, I reckon, thousands. These are letter bombs. That's the way I got to describe them. They're letter bombs because they just turn. They'll blow up in your face the more you ignore them, blow your life apart. Do you think you've got problems with Centrelink? Well, you try fighting these toll road people.
Peter once received a toll debt himself, so he knew of the dangers of ignoring these letters.
I really felt like writing on the letter, which we're strictly not allowed to do as a postie. I felt like writing on the letter, please don't ignore this. I felt like writing it or telling it to them, which I'm not allowed to do either. But I did, a couple of times.
Transurban told us,
if any of our customers are struggling with payments, we urge them to contact our Linked Assist team. There are a range of support measures available, including more time to pay, debt waivers, toll credits, and free support for broader problems they may be experiencing.
When drivers want to complain about toll roads, there is an ombudsman. The ombudsman's entirely funded by Transurban. We wanted to find out how independent he is. This is not what I was expecting. His name is Philip Davies, and his office is in this townhouse in Melbourne's inner north. Well, this is apparently the listed principal place of business for the Tolling Customer Ombudsman, which handles more than 750 complaints every year. But there's nobody home, so we'll keep on trying. Philip Davies can be a hard man to speak to. Hi Philip, it's Pat McGrath calling from Four Corners again. We're very keen to speak with you and to try to line up a time to do an interview, so please give me a call back when you can. Voicemail again. That's a problem because we've been trying to talk to Philip Davies for weeks now, and he does have some serious questions to answer.
To say the least, the Ombudsman doesn't look independent. It's financed by Transurban, and its track record is not great. Complaints take a long time to settle. We need a truly independent Ombudsman, maybe spanning all states, and also some kind of customer advocate function within the system, pushing concerns of motorists.
Philip Davies, the Ombudsman, declined an interview but issued a statement. He said that for the past 5 years he's worked from home or used a shared office. He said the office address would be corrected.
It is an oversight. The corporate record has not been updated.
On independence, he said his funding source does not compromise it, and his role was
structured very similarly to other industry-based resolution schemes.
And he said Transurban has implemented measures to maintain this independence. The New South Wales Roads Minister, John Graham, says the Ombudsman isn't effective and will speak to his counterparts in Victoria and Queensland about creating a more powerful watchdog.
We need something that's more visible, able to be of more help to consumers under pressure. When they've got those cost pressures, when they've got those admin fees adding up and they need a circuit breaker, someone to go to, they need an ombudsman that can help them. That's what we're looking for here. I'm not satisfied the current system's working.
Transurban told us
Transurban supports and has long advocated for reform, particularly of toll notices to help people avoid accumulating outstanding debts and of the toll road system in New South Wales more broadly, including the introduction of a customer advocate.
In Sydney, toll roads was sold as a solution to road congestion. Now they're being blamed for adding to it. Few know this better than owner-driver truckie, Walter Coppin. What percentage of your income are you paying in tolls?
It could be as high as 20%.
20%?
Yeah. If I use toll roads every time where I have the opportunity to use it, I won't make any money. It would just be too expensive.
Governments saw toll roads as a way of keeping trucks off suburban streets, but rising prices are pushing drivers like Walter back onto local roads. The company he works for only pays tolls when there's no other option. Have you been specifically told not to go on toll roads?
Yeah, we had a letter to say not to use toll roads, because if they don't, then they have to reimburse us for the toll roads. So it'd be nice if we could, balance this cost up the line.
A landmark legal ruling 3 years ago mandated that freight companies should pay subcontractors tolls, unless they specifically instruct drivers to avoid them. As a consequence, some major operators have told their drivers to avoid toll roads, pushing them into the suburbs. Four Corners has obtained a letter that freight and courier giant Aramex sent to drivers in August, ordering them not to use toll roads in Sydney. Hi Minister.
Great to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sure. The New South Wales Roads Minister, John Graham, says his government is aware of the problem. We understand there's multiple freight and courier companies in Sydney who have instructed drivers to avoid toll roads. That's pretty dysfunctional, isn't it?
Yeah, these are incredible roads and they should be used more often, but sometimes the prices are too high, and that's driving trucks onto suburban streets. That's one of the impacts here. The high price of tolls is making Sydney more congested. One of the real reasons here to reform this system to reset tolls is we can get more traffic in the tunnels, including truck traffic, but we can reform prices. If we get that balance right, then that could be good for everyone here.
But it's up to the voters in New South Wales. I want to make sure that voters know that this decision is up to them. But what they can vote for is a $60 toll cap for motorists in Sydney.
In New South Wales, Labor was swept to power last year with a promise to slash tolls.
Thanks, everybody.
And quickly ordered an investigation into the toll road industry by consumer policy expert Professor Alan Fells.
Transurban would like the system to continue forever, but they need a social licence, and that social licence is diminishing quite heavily because the public does not like the very high prices, and governments will have to step in and do something that it will give.
His report recommended that the government should seize control of toll pricing from the road operators before the end of the year. But for the first time, Professor Fells is making a startling allegation. A key part of his report was suppressed. Financial modelling showing just how profitable the roads would be was kept from the public.
There was resistance from the start about us seeing the contracts and the all-important financial models, but they should be public. We wanted to publish a lot more information, but we were blocked strongly by the 3 deputy secretaries involved, and at the last minute they produced an overnight legal opinion from the firm they use. The main threat was I'd be sued for billions of dollars and possibly face criminal sanctions.
In a statement, the Department of Transport said,
"It is the department's responsibility to provide the appropriate governance framework and highlight any legal risks to the state of New South Wales. As this is a complex and commercially sensitive issue, it is standard process to obtain specialist legal advice."
It's been more than a year since the New South Wales government promised to make key parts of the secret toll road contracts public. The contracts for Transurban's roads in Melbourne and Brisbane are already on the public record.
That's an election promise that is quickly getting pretty stale now. When will the contracts be made public?
Look, we expect to do that in the near future.
This year?
Look, it may or may not be this year, but it certainly will be in the near future as a part of this process.
Even Tony Shepherd says it's time to bring the secret deals out into the open.
Well, I believe that they should all be published. The Sydney Harbour Tunnel contract was published. The Melbourne City Link contract, all 657 pages of it, was published.
New South Wales is now in negotiations with Transurban about Alan Fell's recommendation for the government to take control of toll prices. If they can't reach an agreement, the state may have no choice but to change the law.
Are you, in a sense, unpicking the legacy of your predecessors here?
Look, Transurban's got a stake in Sydney till 2060 under the private toll road contracts that have been signed by governments. That's just a factor we have to deal with as we've come into government. What we do think, though, is that there's a real need here for a better deal for drivers. If we don't reform tolls, Sydney will become a more congested place to live. It'll be less productive than it should be. It'll have a real impact on people's lives, particularly in Sydney's outer suburbs.
Just to say, if the negotiations fail, that we're going to rip up the contracts and we're going to take control of tolling, I think it's got really significant ramifications and bad ones. It really goes to the sanctity of contract structures and the need for infrastructure investment. And if they want to lower the tolls and not give Transurban anything, then they need to write a very, very big cheque and compensate Transurban for the lost value as a result of tearing up the contracts.
As governments grapple with the expensive toll roads they've inherited, drivers who use them every day have no choice but to live with the ever-rising cost. Mark PS is still waiting for his day in court when he will try to negotiate a payment plan. A magistrate granted Bruce Mabus another adjournment while he awaits a psychologist's report. But the magistrate warned him if he doesn't deal with the fines, he faces a potential punishment of 940 days in prison. Even as their cases come to an end, hundreds more are due to appear in courts over the coming months.
Let's go, you lead the way.
Without a change to the system, Simon Barclay is worried a new generation of drivers will get stuck in the toll debt trap that held his life back.
I think it's ethically dubious that private organisations can leverage the government to chase their debts with multiplier effects tagged onto that, which feels like daylight robbery.
If this program has raised concerns for you, you can contact one of these services.